He says that God gave him a thorn in the flesh in order to remind him that in himself he is but a frail and weak man, and that he should refrain from boasting or elevating himself in any way. God's power is most evident when there is nothing to assist it. Real power, God's power, is most evident when there is nothing that appears trying to support it or make it appear. Therefore, if the gospel message has grown and spread in Corinth, it must be the work of God, for it cannot be Paul, because Paul in himself is but a weak and timid man. If Paul is weak in preaching, then people's conversion must be the result of God's work amongst them. This is the practical evidence of God's grace. The work of God's kingdom is accomplished using ordinary people, carrying in them all the limitations and the frailties that go with being human. Let's look at just a few examples. A number of Paul's letters, as we know, were written from prison. Prison is a place of seclusion and isolation from people, a place where the person is meant to be silenced. And so Paul, being unable to visit congregations, wrote letters. The letter to the Philippians, to the Colossians, his second letter to Timothy, are all written from prison. Today we look back and we see God's hand at work in that moment of weakness in his life. Because he was incarcerated, Paul's letters were read worldwide and have to this day been studied for 2,000 years and translated into more languages than any other written document. The attempt to silence him has had, in fact, the opposite effect. When we are weak, then the power of God is made manifest. 1,500 years after Paul wrote his letters, Martin Luther emerged as one of the leaders of the Reformation. After a series of public debates with the leaders of the Catholic Church, his life began to be in danger, and he was forced to find refuge in the seclusion of a castle in Wartburg in the year 1521. In 2021, we were all in seclusion because of COVID, and that was exactly 500 years after Luther. And while Luther stayed in this castle, cut off from the outside world for about a year, many people thought he must have been killed or he's died because he's not around anymore. Luther at first felt depressed and useless, but then began to use his time of isolation to translate the New Testament into the German that the people spoke, the everyday German of his day. By the time his seclusion ended, the New Testament was available to the German-speaking people of his day. Where in human eyes we are weak, then the power of God is made manifest. More recently, something I think we've all been experiencing and we've been watching with interest is the results of the election that we have just been through. The weakening of the power of having one dominant political party controlling everything weakened. Now, no single political party is able to claim outright majority. And it is out of this outwardly weakened position that we have heard politicians speaking in a more mature and inclusive manner than we have heard for many, many years. Of course, we hold our breath, but we are hopeful that this, our country, will cease its downward trajectory, and working together, helping each other, and serving the people that have elected them, we will have more mature politicians. out of weakness comes new hope and new life. I've given 3 examples of this principle at work in Paul's life, in Luther's life, and something that we are experiencing as a country. But the same applies to you personally and to me. We all carry in ourselves thorns, wounds, painful memories, issues that are painful and don't seem to be able to be resolved, hurting stalemates, even physical infirmities that are painful, and the realization that there are people who just don't like us. Do you have people who just don't like you? I have people who just don't like me, and there's nothing I can do about it. The text challenges us to see these, what may be thorns in our flesh, as challenges to be reminded of God's grace, which is manifested when God uses us, broken as we are, frail people as we are, but for His purpose. In a moment of silence, can you perhaps just reflect in your lives and identify one or more thorns that you feel are thorns in your flesh? Perhaps hand them to the Lord and say, Lord, could you use this to make me more humble and elevate you in my life?